Hello, welcome back to my channel. This is Blueprint Design and I'm Nikhil, and today we are going to talk about components. Components are relatively newly implemented feature in the popular design programs such as Adobe Xd or Figma. And in this video, we're going to talk about the components, what are components exactly, and what was the process before components were a feature. What are the advantages of using components? We're going to also talk about instances of components and how we can override certain settings. And we'll talk about component states in the end as well. So be sure to stay till the end to learn everything about components. I'm fairly new to YouTube and I like sharing my knowledge and ideas with the community. So if you like what you see, do like this video, share it with your network so more people can benefit from these. And also consider subscribing to my channel as I regularly post new videos about UX design on this channel. So let's get started. So I'm in Adobe Xd and I have a few artboards for the mobile viewport over here on the screen. Now I've pulled these artboards from a recent project of mine, which was Possum. The problem statement for designing this app was like, as more North Americans are projected to adopt pets in the next 10 years, there's a growing gap in the market for ease of purchasing pet products and a lack of awareness in the adoption process among the demographic. You can read all about the project and my entire UX process for this project on my website, nikhilgala.com. I'll include a link for my website and this project down in the description. So be sure to check that out. So in this video, we're going to talk about components, but really let's see what the process was before components were a thing. So these artboards individually are for the shopping of pet products and then search and adopt a pet and the process to apply for adoption. And then this one screen was specifically the profile for each and every pet that's on the application. So I want to add the navigation bar on all the artboards. And so initially I would have to come in over here, copy the entire navigation bar, go to my desired artboard and then paste it in place. And that only places like an exact copy of the initial navigation bar. And since this is the adoption artboard, I have to now come in and individually edit everything like so. And as you can imagine, there are more than just 3 or 5 artboards in my design, or actually in a regular design if you are actually working on one. And so adding the navigation bar with the method I showed you just now is a tedious task where you have to actually come in and edit the individual items on every artboard, right? And so that was the process before components were a thing. It was really time consuming and a repetitive process. But just before components, components were actually called symbols. And so when you use symbols, you can actually like use any item as a symbol as long as like you mark it as a symbol, and then you can reuse that particular item. For example, like I have this logo, the Possum app logo. If I mark that as a symbol, I can then use that logo or that particular image in any of the artboards and hundreds of times, as many times I wanted to use. But the only drawback was if I edit any of those 100 copies that I have for this logo, it will actually propagate that change to all the hundreds of items for that logo. And so with this being a challenge, like if you wanted to just edit one item in one of the artboards, you would then have to actually unmark it as a symbol and then make changes as if it were like a standalone item in the layers panel. With components, this process has greatly eased the work required for designers to come in and make edits. The advantages of using components. So I can basically come in over here, and then let's say I want to mark this as a component. So let me just delete this one first. So I can mark this as a component and then reuse this component anywhere I want with minimal effort. Unlike symbols, I get more control over the individual copies. So the advantages of using components are, like, you can basically make changes to individual copies or instances really quickly without affecting any of the other instances of the component. And this is really like the biggest advantage of using components over symbols. If I'm making this as a component, so let's walk you through how to make a component. So there's really multiple ways of how you can create a component. You can actually select whatever item you want. It doesn't really matter what that is. You can make anything into a component. So I'm going to make this navigation bar into a component. So I can, with this group selected, I can simply right click, and then there is a selection to make it into a component, right? Or I can come in over here, and then with that group selected, I can go into the object menu and then make a component. Or into layers panel, I can again right click on that group and then make into a component. Or on the properties panel on the right side, with that group selected, I can simply press the plus icon to make it into a component. And as you've seen in all these methods or all these ways to make into a component, if I really want to work quickly with the group selected, all I need to do is press Command or Control K, and it will be converted into a component. So I'm going to right click on this and make it as a component, and immediately you see that there's a green border around that particular item, and the top left corner, if you notice, has changed into a diamond with green color. So that really indicates that this is the main copy of the component. So any edits you make in here or any changes you make in here in the main copy, they are going to be propagated in all the instances of this particular component wherever you've used it, right? So you can think of this as like the master copy, and try not to use the master copy in any of the artboards, just because if I want to make any customizations for that particular artboard, I'm going to have to make edits into the master copy. And so I try to avoid that as much as I can. I actually save all my components in a separate artboard and then simply create instances by copying it and then using those copies into my artboards. So you can actually differentiate between copies and the main component by again looking at the top left corner. Since this one is an instance, the top left corner of this instance is not filled with green, it's white, but with green borders. So that's how you can actually quickly differentiate between master copy and instances. So this is really how you can create instances. It's that simple. Just copy the master copy or the master component and paste it wherever you want to use it, and you've created an instance. Now, if I want to make changes to this instance, like for example, I'm copying this instance again. So I'm going to right click, copy, paste it over here on this artboard, right? Again, if you see on the top left corner, this is just a diamond without the green fill, so it's an instance. So I can come in over here, make changes to the individual instance, and the other instance is not affected at all. And as a matter of fact, even the master copy is not affected at all, right? So this was a simple example of overriding certain properties in the instances. So if you want to make any edit in an instance of a component, you can pretty much make edits to any style related property on the properties panel, and that will not affect the master copy or any other instance. If you've made any overrides into one particular instance, you can actually see that as well. So if you see again on the top left corner, it has changed into a diamond with a green dot in the middle. So that signifies that some property in this instance has been overridden. And whenever I make any changes in the master copy for the same item that has been overridden. So in this case, it's the white rectangle behind the current artboard. So if I make any changes over here, let's say, for example, I'm making the change in the master copy. Since we have overridden that property in this particular instance, it's not going to be updated. But if you see in this one, we did not make any changes. That particular change in the master copy was actually propagated over here as well. Right now, I don't want to make that change, so I'm just going to press Command or Control Z to undo that change, and that is propagated here as well. So this is how you can make changes or overrides to any properties for any item within that component or the instance of an component. And basically, you can use this instance wherever you want in your design. So that way, I still have the control of individually making any changes or overrides to a particular instance of a component. But if I want to come in and let's say change the complete design, like this design, let's say was not approved, and I have to come in and change everything. So I simply come in and change the master copy, and that change will be propagated everywhere. So that's really the power of components. And now we're going to talk about how we can actually compound that power by making use of component states. So really, up till now, we actually saw how we can actually use instances of a component. And if I want to make changes or override any properties, I can come in and make those edits again. So if you compare the process which we followed right now and then the normal process without using a component, it's not that different. Like I still have to come in and make that change in this particular instance. So if I want to make that process even faster, what I can do is I can use component states. So coming back to the main master copy, if you see over here on the properties panel, there is this default state that we created for this component, right? And then I still have the plus icon that says add one more state, right? So I can basically create a new copy of this component, and Adobe allows you to create three different kinds of states. One is like a new state, which we are going to work, take a look into. The other one is a hover state. And then one more recent addition to this is the toggle state. So let's say if you're using a checkbox or a radio button or a toggle button. So there's really only two states, on or off. So that means that basically toggles between one or the other state. So you can really make use of this special state called toggle state. Again, that's also wired up by default. So with this particular component selected, I'm actually going to create a new state. And so I can come in and edit the name for this, and I'm going to say adopt, right? So now you see visually nothing much has changed because we still have this master copy selected. But now we are actually editing the adopt state of that particular component. I'm going to make that change like we did before. So I'll come in over here, make that change. So now this becomes the adopt state for this particular component, right? Now, if I go back to the default state, that's really there. I've not edited it. I simply created a copy within the master copy. So I can actually use any of these in my designs. I only had to make this change one time within the master copy, and now I can actually use just drag and drop simply. So we're going to make the change for the services artboard, which is this one, right? So like we did just now, I'm going to come in, click on this plus icon to add a state, select new state, and then make the edits or changes or overrides that I want to make. So I'm gonna do this quickly. So there we go. I made those changes, and really all the other states are still there. So this is the default state, which is for the shop artboard. This is the adoption artboard. This is the services artboard. And while we're doing this, I'm actually going to create one more state, which is for the account. I've made those changes in the master copy. Okay, so if you see on the top left corner, we have the diamond, which is filled with green color. So this is the master copy. So I have 4 states within that master copy, right? So this is the default state. This is the adopt state. This is services, and this is account. Now you can create as many states as you want for this master copy. You can also create hover states if you want for any of the other components that you're using. Right now, this is the power of using that component, right? So I come in over here. Now I simply, because this is the shopping artboard, I want to use the default state. Earlier, we had to make this override for this particular instance. But now if I can just change it to adopt state, I simply create a copy. So I'm going to copy this, come in over the pet bio. Now this really in my design, it's really part of the adopt workflow as well. So I'm going to paste the menu bar in place, and simply if you notice on the components section of the properties inspector, all I have to do is select the appropriate state, and that change is actually going to be reflected in the design. That's the power of using components and instances and states. So if you combine and use them, you can actually simplify your workflow and really speed it up. So if I have to come in and make that change again for the services artboard, I can pretty much copy any of my instance. So I'm going to copy it with the artboard selected. I'm going to paste it to where I want, and then simply come in over the properties inspector and select the appropriate state. And that's all I have to do really. So let's see this again. That's it. Since we are talking about components and states, you don't really have to stop by just creating the states. What you can also do is create interactions from the master components. So if I go into the prototype tab, you can see I've actually, with this master component, I've actually created the interactions to different artboards as per my design choice. And that's really the power of components, because all of these interactions are also going to be propagated to all of their instances. So if I go in and select one of the instance, you can see that the same interaction is also available over here. That's it for this video. I really would love to see what designs you come up with. And if you'd like to share those with me, we have an Instagram account. You can basically just message us over there, or simply just comment down below in the comment section. We'd love to see what you come up with. So if you like what you saw, do like this video and then share it with your network so more people can benefit. And also consider subscribing to this channel, as we regularly post videos about UX design. Thank you so much for watching.